My earliest memory of a real New York City summer hits behind the eyes, humid and bright. The windows of our two-bedroom apartment on West 63rd Street were opened wide, and the smells, burning oil, Chinatown steam buns from the bakery below, trash spun around us in the cluttered air. Ma would fan herself with a torn newspaper, her arms brown and strong, her eyes always darting between her 4 kids and the stove. And there was me, buzzy with ideas I didn't understand yet, a surge of watchfulness in everything I did. I was 22 at the family dinner when it all came to a head. That night we sat cramped together, scratchy polyester tablecloth bunched around our elbows. 12-year-old Gina, my youngest sister, was poking at her noodles. Max, my brother, had his mouth stuffed with greasy dumplings. Ma's voice filled the apartment, quick and sharp as always. But it was my father's laugh that landed hardest. "Filmmaker," he says. His accent always thickened when he was making a point. "Here's the next Spielberg, yes? He will make movies and we will all be rich." The table burst into snickers, even Ma's mouth curving up, though she tried to hide it. Shame trickled in hot under my skin. Steaming plates, chipped bowls, the soft click-click of Ma's ivory bracelet as she gripped her fork too tightly. Everything felt exposed and grainy, like bad 8mm footage. I had spent the morning rehearsing in my head how I'd finally dare to tell them I wanted to make films for a living. Not Hollywood movies, not the kind my father imagined when he tossed Spielberg into the air like a baseball. Documentary work, I explained. Real stories from the city's cracked bones and hopeful hearts. The stuff no one saw unless someone held up a camera. Their laughter shoved me back into my chair. I remember the wallpaper, a fading field of blue roses, closing in like a stage curtain. It wasn't anger at first, just embarrassment, like being caught flea-ridden in public. Something pitifully laughable about wanting too much in a room where the rent was always late. "You spent 4 years in university for this?" my father asked. "After everything your mother and I did? You want to chase people with camera? Ask questions? Like some nosy pigeon?" He stabbed his celery with such force, I thought the tines would snap. Ma tried gently. "Kai, maybe you can do films for hobby? Like those wedding videos your cousin does?" She wouldn't look at me. Gina piped up, "Can you make a video of my school play?" It was honest, but in that moment, just another nudge of dismissal. Max, teeth bared in a smirk, said, "Man, just help Dad at the shop. Or do real reporting, TV news. Who even wants those sad stories you like?" The room closed in, echoing off those peeling walls. My dream, a camera and the city's unreported truths, sounded small and self-indulgent. I felt the heat in my cheeks, the absurdity of telling my parents I wanted to make something real, something with meaning, while they counted every grocery dollar and wore their sacrifice in the lines crawling their faces. I swallowed, reached for my water, waited for them to keep talking. But what fell over me was a wall of disappointment, heavier than any ridicule. After dinner, I stood in the bathroom, feet sticking slightly to the ancient pale green tiles, and looked at my own face, a stranger who thought he could be an artist in Manhattan. I let that shame burn through me, not pushing it away, just letting it gild my resolve. The next day, I left. Not ran away, not stormed out. I packed 2 bags, left a note next to the incense in Ma's altar. "I need to start something on my own. All right. Love, Michael." And walked down 4 flights without the usual backward glance. The city outside had teeth. I slept on friends' couches at first, then in a rented room in Astoria with a mattress I dragged up 4 flights alone. I got work in a bagel shop, then, finally, as a runner for a small production company that made wedding videos and awkward ads for local hardware stores. The camera was old, sticky with black tape. Sometimes my hands shook so badly, I had to lock my elbows and focus on the blinking red dot at the corner of the viewfinder. Weeks became months. Some things hurt worse. 5-hour phone calls with Ma, who mostly listened and then quietly would say, "Are you eating?" Not "Are you winning?" Just "Are you safe?" But there was sweetness in those hungry years. I shot anything I could: parades, protests in Foley Square, street dancers in Brooklyn. The taxi driver who let me sit up front and filmed his sunrise shifts. My feet toughened, my brain learned to cut film on a computer that crashed every hour, and I started to see the secret city thread by thread. People didn't always want their story told, but some did. The city was endlessly alive. I found other dreamers, Ro, who worked days as a sound tech and paid for canned beans with Subway busking, and Matthew, who had a battered old Mac and patched together our messes into something nearly beautiful. We made little news YouTube pieces. Quick edits for the lefty online magazines. I sent links home sometimes, but my parents rarely watched. "Too busy," Ma would text. "Send photos?" Each achievement was a secret scored into my chest, private and blood-bright. When the real break came, I hardly noticed at first. A small, persistent story. A fire in a Chinatown bakery. An old woman who ran soup kitchens for the out-of-work. The neighborhood learning to rebuild ordinary life out of ashes. I spent weeks shadowing her, waking before dawn, filming through the steam and clatter. My voice trembling in interviews, learning what to cut and what to leave quiet and true. The little film, 15 minutes, aired on a local PBS affiliate. For weeks, nothing. Then, slowly, a ripple. An email from the Tribeca Film Festival committee. "We'd love to screen your film at our shorts program. Congratulations." I barely believed it was real. Hugged me so hard my spine cracked. Showing my badge at Tribeca did not make me feel instantly powerful, as some part of me had always imagined. But when the credits rolled and strangers clapped, nobody laughing, nobody dismissing, just eyes shining and questions like, "What's next for you?" I felt a strange tenderness in my chest. For my father, for their tired hands, for the city that had forced me to prove it over and over. The film did what nobody expected. A short doc, made with borrowed sound gear and hours of cold coffee, traveled further than I'd thought possible. It won a small but real grant. A producer from National Geographic contacted me. The subject of the documentary, Mei Hua, became a minor celebrity in her slice of Chinatown. And sometimes, when we talked, she'd say, "You made people see us. You made it matter." I started working full-time as a documentarian, not for the fame, but with enough of a reputation that I no longer had to explain my worth to every client. More films followed, more grants. My name went in the right places. I sent money home, not with fanfare, but with steady regularity, paying the debts my parents never stopped counting. When Ma asked, "Are you okay?" I'd answer, "I am," and it was the truth. Still, I did not go home for a long while. Guilt haunted me, a child's sense of exile and misplaced pride. I missed birthdays. The Lunar New Year's. The smell of ginger and pork fat. Ma's hesitant texts stacked in silence, the little red exclamation marks flashing delivered, but rarely ringing back. It wasn't that I did not forgive them. It was that some part of me still needed them to see me, just once, as more than the punchline at dinner. When the phone call finally came, it wasn't triumph or even invitation. Gina, now finishing high school, called sobbing, so fast I barely understood. "Mom, she please come, now. Dad, he can't work anymore." That was all I needed. I bought a bus ticket, dark outside, my bag heavy with equipment. Back in the apartment, little changed. The blue rose wallpaper, the crowded smells. Ma's bracelet, now loose with weight lost to worry. My father's hair was white. He sat on the couch, one arm limp after a stroke, his face raw and closed off. They let me in, quietly, with little fanfare. Ma's eyes held mine a second too long. Dad said nothing. I unloaded groceries, put away dishes. Fixed the leaking sink. Night fell, and the city's rumble became the backdrop for old memories. But there was tenderness in being needed, in stepping in. I remembered that love sometimes came not as praise, but as obligation, as feeding and carrying and watching someone breathe easier. During those weeks, as we settled into a new awkward rhythm, word spread. I was in town. My films had done well, people said. A neighbor came by with sticky rice, asking questions. My old high school teacher stopped me in the bodega, shaking my hand. One day, Gina bounced into the living room, waving her phone. "Look, Coach Lynn from school says her friend saw your movie at this library event." I laughed, embarrassed. That was pretty small. She pressed. "You should show everyone here. Let them see." She was insistent. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. The community association, where my parents volunteered for years, asked if I'd be willing to screen a documentary for their Chinese New Year banquet. I hesitated, but Gina organized everything. Flyers went up in the shops on our block. The library lent us a projector. That Saturday, I stood in the back of the association's gymnasium, floors sticky with decades of fried rice and linoleum polish. Children zipped around between round tables heavy with spring rolls and sliced oranges. Paper lanterns floated, petal red against the low ceiling. My father arrived late, with Ma pushing his wheelchair, the laughter around us reminding me of that dinner long ago. There were 100 faces, sharp-boned and rounded, familiar and faded. I recognized the tailor who had hemmed my school pants, Mrs. Wu, who sold herbs in the corner shop.